All right, many thanks, Claire Pride in the newsroom. Amid all the upheaval in the Arab world, there's a small, multi-confessional nation that's been, well, trying to stay under the radar, but Lebanon lies at the crossroads of the region. In Beirut this Tuesday, more than 24 killed in successive suicide blasts. It happened near the Iranian embassy. That's a first. A small radical Sunni movement with alleged ties to al-Qaeda has claimed responsibility. We're going to put that claim to the test. Seems there's a lot of folks in Lebanon that have issues with Tehran, the main benefactor of armed Shia movement Hezbollah, a movement whose fighters are actively engaged over the border alongside the Syrian army of Bashar al-Assad, Assad, who also has the support of, yes, Iran. The blast also happens to come on the eve of negotiations in Geneva over Iran's nuclear ambitions, with many predicting that a breakthrough could put the entire region on the cusp of great change. Today in the France 24 debate, it is Iran targeted. With us from Beirut, Lebanese historian, publisher, and social activist Lachman Slim. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
From London, Jonathan Paris, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Welcome back to the France 24 debate. Welcome back as well to Eli Abdelhey of the Lebanese March 14th coalition. Can we say it's the opposition coalition, I suppose?
Yes, opposition coalition.
For the time being.
I am here as head of Lebanese forces in Europe.
Lebanese forces, which is one of the main parties inside of that coalition. Also joining us, France 24 reporter Maïssa Awad. Welcome to the debate.
Thank you.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. Our hashtag F24debate. 23 killed, that is the latest toll from that blast. Let's get more now from Rochelle Harrison-Pless.
The twin bombings occurred only minutes apart in the Lebanese capital, causing carnage in the streets of this upmarket Beirut neighborhood. The area surrounding the Iranian embassy now littered with debris, burnt-out cars and shattered glass.
We saw cars flying, bodies, blood on the streets. It was the act of criminals.
Leaving several dead and injuring scores more, it's one of the worst attacks to hit the area, a known stronghold of the Islamist militant group Hezbollah.
What happened today is a terrorist act. It comes as part of a series of terrorist acts that are targeting Lebanese territory, people, institutions and unity.
The Abdullah Azzam brigades, which has links to al-Qaeda, claim to be behind the blasts. They said that attacks would continue until Hezbollah withdraws its forces from Syria. Damascus blamed the attack on Saudi Arabia, while Iran pointed the finger at Israel, who immediately denied involvement. Iran is one of Syria's main allies and a key sponsor of Hezbollah, who has played a significant military role in the ongoing Syrian civil war.
Now, before we go to our panel, let's go to Beirut and reporter Rania Abu Zaid. Rania, welcome back to the debate. Let me ask you, this is a suicide attack, which is quite unprecedented, targeting the Iranian embassy. We don't see that very often. Does this claim by the Abdullah Azzam brigade seem plausible in light of what we know so far?
Well, you know, the list of Hezbollah and Iran's foes is quite a long one, so it could be any particular group. And just because a group claims it doesn't mean that they were necessarily behind it. I remember the last time that there was a blast in Beirut southern suburbs on August 15th. I was in Syria at the time with conservative Sunni Islamists who were quite happily watching the news from there, watching the news of what was happening in Beirut. And at one point they were debating whether or not they should claim this attack, even though it was quite clear at the time that they had nothing to do with it. So, you know, I think that we need to take these claims of attack, claims of responsibility with a grain of salt until they can somehow be verified. Having said that, today's attack was a serious escalation, both in terms of the target, as you mentioned, the Iranian embassy, and also the tactic of using a double suicide bombing. I mean, you know, Beirut is a capital which is sadly quite used to car bombs, but they tend to take place in parked cars rather than this more sort of dynamic, more serious tactic of using suicide bombers.
And that tactic, what does it tell you?
Well, it's certainly a hallmark of many sort of, Sunni extremist groups. However, having said that, that's not enough to, as well as Iranian groups as well. So, I mean, the list of potential perpetrators is still quite long, but it certainly indicates an escalation in what's happening here in Lebanon as the various parties sort of ramp up the level of violence that we're seeing in the streets of Beirut.
All right, I want to thank you, Rania Abu Zaid, for joining us from Beirut. In fact, we'll stay in Beirut with you, Lachman Slim. You heard Rania there mention how people have seen a lot in Lebanon over the years, but they're alarmed seeing this as an escalation. People you've been speaking to, what's their reaction been?
Actually, in spite of the fact that Lebanon in general and Beirut in particular witnessed a lot of violence over these last years, but I think that the blast of today is very particular. For the first time, we saw an Iranian, directly, frankly speaking, Iranian facility being targeted, which means that the target wasn't just, a cluster of buildings, anonymous buildings within Dahye, the southern suburb of Beirut. The target was highly political. So we can't miss the message. And I think that if we refer to the statements done by various senior Iranians, we will see that they said it in their way. They talked about a bell ring. They talked about, they shifted the accusation to Israel. So it's clear that something new is happening. In addition to all this, my attention was drawn to the statement published by the Abdullah Azzam brigades, because in this statement they make a point to precise that the author of this twin bombing, the two suicidals, are young Lebanese Sunnah. So they are defying the thesis that finally takfiri thinking and terrorist Islamist is just imported from outside.
Remind our viewers what takfiri thinking is.
Let's say exclusionist thinking, banning others based on some ideas. So this, of course, will not miss to escalate the relationships between Sunnah and Shia at a grassroots level. And I believe that most of the Lebanese politicians and observers are mainly concerned with the possible escalation of the day-to-day relationships between the two communities.
Maisa Awad, you heard at the outset of the show, Rania Abu Zaid express a lot of caution when it came to this claim of responsibility. Do you share that caution?
Well, definitely, especially in this kind of explosion. It's a massive explosion. It's a big message towards Iran, towards even different political parties that support the President Bashar al-Assad. What we know from this brigade, we first heard of it on the year 2004 during the explosion in Taba in Egypt. And in 2011, we've heard that this brigade, actually, it claimed responsibility for launching Katyusha missiles on Israel. And later on, they targeted UNIFIL forces in Lebanon. So the name is familiar in Lebanon, but of course, we need to wait. We need to verify whether if they actually made it or not. And let's not forget, Francois, that in mid of August, another explosion took place in Dahye in Ruwais, and it killed more than 27 people. Back then, another brigade linked to Al-Qaeda, that's Saraya al-Aisha al-Mu'minin, also claimed responsibility for the explosion, but we didn't hear from it afterwards. So we have to be really cautious, but all scenes are to be explored, I think, in the days to come.
So something to be very cautious about. Eli Abdelhay, targeting the Iranian embassy with suicide bombers. What's been the reaction of your party and of your movement?
Let me first, because today we have a lot of people have lost a lot of their relatives in this suicide bombing, And I would like, in my name and in the name of Lebanese forces and 14 March Coalition, to express our condolences to the families of these victims, and we wish quick recovery for the wounded people and injured people. You know what happened today? We have seen a series of attacks these last months, and Mersa said it clearly about Ruwais and about also Ndahia today. But we have also not to forget what happened in Tripoli. And you know, we are in a period in Lebanon now where it is open to every terrorist attack coming from everywhere. So in Tripoli, we have seen that Syrian intelligence have been involved. Today, Brigade of Abdullah Azam, he claimed that he has done this bombing. Maybe yes, maybe no. You know, we don't know who is using who to attack.
And what's your past experience? Will we know at some point?
You know, I will say, you know, 7 months ago, we had a person named Hashim Salman, who was killed in front of the Iranian embassy. And by that date, he was beaten in front of everyone. He was killed by the people in front of the embassy. And by that time, they said, we don't have photos. We don't know who has done it. And today, 2 hours after the bombing, he said, we have photos of everyone and we have identified the people. So it answers your question. We know, yes, if we want to know.
Okay.
And it depends from where.
Well, let's say that Lebanon right now is really exposed when it comes to security. Even we have this vacuum on so many levels, political level, even social level, economic level, even cultural level at some point. Let's not forget that the government right now is a caretaker government led by Mr. Najib Mikati. The Prime Minister, Tamam Salam, is not able to form a government. So many key figures in the security, you know,
right, so
the mandates are officially over, but still they are extended by the parliament that extended to itself even. So the situation is really volatile in Lebanon, and definitely when it's that exposed, we expect to see, unfortunately, more and more of these escalations.
Of these kinds of radicals.
I would like just to answer your question, because I did not answer your question. What is our position? Our position is very clear. We want to neutralize. We want to avoid to get involved into the regional conflicts. We want Hezbollah to withdraw from Syria. We want the Lebanese army to control the Syrian-Lebanese border, because they say that they are coming from there. And we want, if the Lebanese army, with the Lebanese army forces, and also according to the Security Council Resolution 1701, helped the Lebanese army.
Okay, so we'll look at that, because that is the broader picture of the state of Lebanon. We will get back to that point in a moment. Let's first, though, just another word on some of the reactions we've been getting to today's attacks. The Iranian Foreign Minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, saying the tragedy today should be an alarm for all of us that we need to deal with. And unless we deal with it seriously, it will engulf us all. Tehran's ambassador to Beirut insists it will not change, however, his government's Syria stance.
With regards to Syria and other countries, we are on the side of the people. We have already made it clear that we are people of principles, not interests. Principles which reflect the just demands of most of the people in any country in the world. Whether it's Syria, Palestine, Tunisia, Egypt, or Bahrain. The principle is the same in all countries. And as I said before, this kind of attack will never affect us.
All right, Jonathan Paris, let me ask you, there was the ambassador there in his statement he that we just heard, he reads off a long list of countries: Syria, Palestine, Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain. What does he mean?
I'm not sure what he means, but it's what I see for Iran is that the Syrian civil war has become its Vietnam. You remember the United States was bogged down in Vietnam in the 70s. Iran is bogged down in Syria. And this bombing is an example of the blowback from Iran's involvement and Hezbollah's involvement across the border in Syria. I think what we're primarily seeing is a sectarian reaction from the Sunni radicals to Iran and Hezbollah's involvement on behalf of Assad. But it's a little more complicated than just sectarian Shia versus Sunni, because Ayatollah Sistani just yesterday said that he wants Assad to step down. Ayatollah Sistani is a Shia leader in Iraq, a Shia religious leader. So not all Shia are supporting Assad. The other thing that's interesting is the Gallup poll just showed that over half the Iranian people want to get out of Assad, Syria. They don't want their country supporting Assad. So the ambassador really isn't representing the majority of the Iranian people. They are not happy with this war in Syria on behalf of the dictator, Assad.
And when he mentions all those countries, why is he doing it?
Well, I think he's trying to say that he's trying to get behind the Arab Spring on the side of the revolution. So he's mentioning Tunisia because that's where the Arab Spring began. Bahrain, where there is a proxy war, as you know, going on between Saudi Arabia, which supports the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the Iranians who are supporting some of the Shia militants. The Shia are the majority of Bahrain. So he's mentioning them for strategic reasons, but primarily he's mentioning them to avoid the real dilemma for Iran, which is they are stuck in the mud in Syria. They can't get out. They have to put more into it. It wouldn't surprise me if one of the reasons Rouhani is negotiating with the United States, it's not just on the nuclear issue, but it's to get them to cut their losses on Syria by trying to get a deal on Syria with the West. It's getting very bad for the Iranians.
Lachman Slim, do you agree that Iran is bogged down effectively in Syria?
Fully agree with what Jonathan said, and I want to make clear that when we talk about Hezbollah in Syria or Hezbollah in Lebanon, we are not talking about the Shia community, but we are talking about an organization, mainly a security organization with a political wing, which is monopolizing the Shia political representation in Lebanon. Consequently, Hezbollah's involvement in Syria is not done in the name of the Shia community, Lebanese Shia community, but in the name of the Iranian expansionist interest in this part of the world.
So we're going to pick up on that point when we come back. We have to take a quick break, but we will pick up on it on Hezbollah's position going forth. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.